Alright, good afternoon. My name is Nelson Chamba, and this is my second narrated presentation for gambling and internet disorder. To start things off, we'll talk about what is substance use disorder. In the text, it states that it's a pattern of long-term maladaptive behaviors and reactions brought about by repeated use of a substance. So many examples would be drug related, like being addicted to heroin or cocaine, but it doesn't have to be exactly drug related. It could be other types of activities such as sports, gambling, the internet, what have you. Another definition they included into the text was called substance intoxication, was a cluster of temporary undesirable behavior or psychological change that develop during or shortly after the ingestion of a substance. Later on in this presentation, I'll give you examples that I think would go perfectly along with substance intoxication. The first example that I figured we'd talk about for substance use disorder is about a professional wrestling athlete called Kurt Angle. Now, Kurt Angle was an actual Olympic gold medalist for wrestling, and then shortly after he went into a career of wrestling entertainment in the WWF. Now, Kurt Angle fell into a dark part of his career when he had continual injuries of breaking his neck, and which caused him to be addicted to morphine pills. So being addicted to the morphine pills caused Kurt to be really irritable and difficult to work with. And once the company caught wind of his addiction, they tried to give him help, and they tried to allow him to break his addiction so he can continue working there. But Kurt decided against that and didn't want help, and he left the company. Now, the addiction to the morphine pills almost ruined his career and almost ruined his life. He was very irritable, like I said before, and he didn't want help from anyone. He was constantly addicted to the morphine pills because he felt like those were the only things that kept him going in his career, and without it, he'd be nothing without it. Next, I wanted to talk about the substance intoxication, which the best example would probably be when you're drinking alcohol. Just like Kermit the Frog here. See, Kermit has ingested a lot of alcohol, so he's feeling knocked out. A lot of the time, especially at parties, people drink alcohol to loosen up, and they have so much of it that they almost become a different person. Their mood changes, they do things they might have not done when they were drunk. And I think that's what best describes the substance indulgence. Alright, so on to the main topic of gambling disorder and internet disorder. So gambling disorder, what is it? It's an impulse to gamble no matter what. For example, maybe in the casinos, if you're playing poker or blackjack, or it can even be in real life when you're betting on if something may or may not happen. It leaves the individual craving for excitement. So for example, if I had a lot of money, the more money I would bet, the more excited I would be for the possibility of winning a lot more money. And if I were to lose that money, I'd be upset, and I'd try to gamble even more just so I could win that money back. So the individual, when not gambling, may feel distressed because all he's thinking about is gambling. And he'll come up with any reason to gamble, and he'll try to lie to cover up any idea that he may be addicted to gambling. So when an individual is addicted to gambling, they'll gamble anything. Maybe money, clothes, jewelry, anything that may be of value, so they can offer it for something else. Now, gambling could have an effect on an individual to constantly win. If an individual is depressed and maybe they tend to gambling because when they win they feel better about themselves, so they constantly search for that feeling. The next subject is called internet use disorder. So what is it? It's pretty much the individual wanting to be connected to the internet at all times. So they're constantly on their phone, tablet, computer, what have you, which is essentially replacing real world activities with internet ones. For example, instead of going over someone's house to play video games nowadays, you can just go online and play with that individual in their own homes. Or if you wanted just to go out and talk to somebody, you don't have to anymore because you can just text them or have a group chat and text multiple individuals. That also leads to the individual being dependent on their electronic. They can't imagine being without their phone. They're constantly on it. They constantly feel the need to be able to check their social media at all times. So why this may be a problem is because the individual, they tend to hide behind their electronics. On the internet, they're more vocal, especially on social media, because they're hiding behind the technology. They're not actually saying it to the person's face. At the end of the day, it allows the individual to be less confrontational. They become more shy because they're not used to being able to have real life conversations with somebody or really be able to discuss their feelings. They don't develop social skills, and all they know is how to send out a tweet instead of actually how to approach somebody. I think internet use disorder goes hand in hand being addicted to technology because it's practically the same thing. Nowadays, when you go outside, you see groups of people just on their cell phones. They hardly ever speak to each other. Or even when you go on dates, you can see a couple just being on their cell phones instead of actually just looking at each other and having an actual real conversation without any interruption. So on to the main topic of the conversation. How does gambling disorder and internet disorder similar to other substance use disorders? Yeah, at the end of the day, all substance use disorders are about addiction. The individual is addicted to what they're using. Maybe drugs or the internet. They have the constant need for it. They're craving for it. They can't go throughout their day without thinking about it, and that's all they think about. And they'll do anything to have it. Maybe harm to themselves or maybe harm to others. The next is that they use it for an escape. It's an escape from their real life problems. Everybody's almost guilty of when things get awkward in a conversation, they just whip out their cell phones and just look at it, go on Instagram, pretend that nothing ever happened. Or if they're constantly depressed, they'll go out more and drink, maybe smoke marijuana, just to lighten their mood and they can get over their problems for a little while. Individuals are constantly looking for the escape, no matter what they may be. If I was depressed and in need of a pick me up, I might look for someone to drink, or might go online, play video games, just to escape those problems, even for a little while. But some, it may be more extreme than others. Like for example, internet gaming disorder is a combination of different types of substance use disorders like gambling and internet. So just the thought of electronics being an escape from reality and not having to deal with real world situations, you're actually gambling online instead of like gambling in an actual casino with other people. So it's like you're taking two ways to push yourself away from reality. And lastly, how do these disorders differ from other substance use disorders? Firstly, gambling and internet use disorder is not something that's ingested into the body. For example, like heroin or alcohol. These are not something that they have to obtain illegally or go out and buy. These are something they can just do themselves. Also, these disorders, the gambling and the internet, they don't have any body changing chemical substances. For example, like I mentioned with Kurt Angle, the morphine pills made him more aggressive and irritable, and he was addicted to them. Other examples could be like heroin addicts, where they actually decompose some parts of the body and completely change the way they look, causing them massive weight loss around the chin and just in general throughout the body. And lastly, they may not be easily observed. If you're addicted to alcohol, some people may pick up those habits quickly, or even addicted to other types of drugs because they show more symptoms out than others. Nowadays, everybody's on their phone constantly, so how can you possibly determine who's more addicted to their phone than others? It's only when it's almost too late to determine that's when you notice. For the gambling problem as well, everybody likes to gamble a little bit, but it's only up until you're gambling to your last penny is when people start to realize that you may not be okay and that you're addicted to it. That is my presentation about gambling disorder and internet disorder. Thank you very much. Have a good day.